guys? And welcome to another episode of the Investor Relations Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Catani, and I am joined today by Bethany Finch. Bethany, the remote RV investor and founder of American-Made Home Solutions. Bethany has over 25 years founding and running 4 separate companies: credit hacking business, an executive rental business, a single-family residential renovation business, and a multifamily syndication business. Her and her husband, Kurt Finch, have worked their way up from a groundskeeper to owner of multifamily. One time, Kurt had over 5,000 doors, all under full renovations, across 20 different properties under management. Kurt and Bethany are working to utilize their God-given gifts to further Christ's kingdom while utilizing their many properties in many different markets. Bethany, welcome.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it so much, John. And I'm partial to the name. My youngest is named Jonathan as well.
Oh, I love it. Well, it's a great name. Not
Yes,
that I'm biased or anything. Fun fact, Bethany is coming to us live from Starbucks. So we love that as well.
Yeah, that background is definitely not me, right? Anybody that knows me, they're like, what is that?
So if you watch this on YouTube, just know that she's at Starbucks. So we love it. Problem solving. It's the best.
Right.
So let's get into it. We have a lot to talk about today. I'm very excited for this conversation. We had an awesome conversation off camera, so a lot to get to, but you guys have done a ton over the years. 25 years is a long time. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. How did you get into all of this?
Back to the beginning. I'm old. I don't think you're even old enough for me to go back to the beginning. You're so young. Let's see. Back to the beginning. I have always been entrepreneurial minded from the time I was 10. I was in and out of foster care and had to figure out how to pay for whatever I wanted or needed. And sometimes that was clothes and sometimes that was food, right? So I had to figure out ways to make money and learn to hustle pretty young. And so then when we were married and we're starting a family, I had to figure out how are we going to add those extra expenses in and figure out how to pay for it. And I wanted flexibility. I wanted to stay home with my kids. And how do I do that? So again, it's like, okay, back to my entrepreneurial roots. So started a business again and really just escalated for the flexibility. And then once I started growing as an entrepreneur, I'm like, wait, there's tax benefits. Oh, wait, there's other opportunities here. So one of my businesses, I intentionally ran at a loss for 5 years just for the tax benefits. It was able to offset our income and give us more cash in our pocket, which is what we needed with our young family. So as I continued to grow, it just evolved, and my businesses have expanded, and some have gone by the wayside, and I still have the 4 going now, but it was mostly the need for constant flexibility, but also income, and then the tax benefits and the opportunities there to do more with the resources that I had. So when we were able to see that bigger picture, it's like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to scale this out.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. So many incentives tax-wise in this industry. You've got a few different businesses. Before we kind of get into the weeds of real estate, one is the credit hacking. I joined a credit hacking group. Kind of touch on that, how you discovered that. And I feel like not a lot of people talk about this, but there is a lot there in terms of getting legitimate business credit with 0% interest and, being able to invest in and all of these things. So kind of touch on how you discovered that, and then we'll get to the real estate.
So early on in my business, I realized that, the OPM, other people's money. And it's like, well, how does that work? Oh, well, you need credit. Well, how do I have credit if I don't have this? And how many business owners start their business on their own personal credit? And then they have all that debt, which tanks their credit score. And then they can't. How does economy work? It's like, okay, so with the economy, the banks and the lenders, they want you to, have as much personal credit as possible and not use any of it. But on the business side, it's the complete opposite. They want you to have as much credit as possible and constantly be moving the money, right? They want to see movement all the time. This is what I need to do. I need to build out this business credit. I need to figure this out. So just kept talking to the banks and lenders, and then hard money lenders and private money lenders, and started figuring out, wait a minute, anything is possible. There's always money available. So for me, it was really just a strategy to figure things out, okay, I have no money. I want to start a real estate business. How am I going to do it? And once I did it, so many of our contractors, the same thing. They're struggling. They're phenomenal contractors, terrible in business and finance. So they're always behind, right? So it's like, okay, let me show you how to do this. And so our credit hacking business is a phenomenal way for both personal and business to not only get debt paid off in 3 to 7 years, even 30-year mortgages, but not have to think about it. So we wanted to find a way to basically use technology and move all that. And so now we have that set up. We can show them how to pay all the debt off. The technology does the work, and then also help them build the business credit. I mean, it's just a win-win. And then scale it, thinking like the rich, right? What do you do with it now that you've done this? Now what do you do? So you don't just go buy a boat, but you use it to invest, or you do, other things.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that so much. And like you said, such a win-win, because you get to help people learn about it, but also it's such a tremendous bonus and incentive that's there that not a lot of people are utilizing. I didn't even know it was there until I have a good friend who has a credit hacking business, and he's like, you should join. And I didn't understand credit for a long part of my life. It wasn't until I was about 26 or 27. And sure enough, you can destroy your credit pretty quickly if you're not paying attention, and it takes a while to get back. So
yeah, exactly. Well, and how many times they use it for everything. So people are constantly pulling your credit, and you may not even be aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah, even like signing up for bills and utility and stuff like that. So if you're a young person, do not let your credit slip by. Pay attention to that right now and be on top of it. Even if you don't want to get a credit card, just don't hurt your credit, because it takes a long time to fix. I can attest to that personally. So one thing we didn't mention, you guys travel around in an RV, which is incredible. Was that something you guys always wanted to eventually do, or what led you there?
It was not something we ever really envisioned. I think maybe my husband might have at one point. His family started getting camper trailers, and they always had them for when we'd have family reunions. We were the ones still in the tent, but he never envisioned necessarily going and hitting the road per se. He just looked at it, oh, it'd be nice to have one of those because I'm tired of sleeping in a tent, So in 2020, we were always very prayerful about our business. And during 2020, we have teams all across the country. So normally I fly and travel to all these different teams, and we keep in touch and all that. And that's, just how we've done it for years. 2020 put a huge damper on that with the airlines and everything. I have a legitimate medical condition. I have a card, the whole works. I'm not supposed to wear a mask. And I went the entire COVID until October, never wearing a mask in an airport, never wearing a mask on a plane, never anything. And it wasn't until October of 2020, my husband and I were on a flight, and a pilot physically left his seat and was going to eject me off the plane because of the mask, even when I'm showing him my legal right to not wear one, the full works.
Jeez.
And it was at that point, my husband said, we're done. We're done flying. Nobody's going to control you. Nobody's going to control our business. And we will take this back. And so as we had been praying, the Lord had already shown us we were probably going to have to do something different, but we didn't know what it was. At that point, he had very good clarity. We were getting in an RV. We thought it was only going to be for 6 months, though. We said, okay, let's commit for 6 months. We were already in the process of liquidating all of our properties in Washington State because of politics and a bunch of nonsense there. A year and a half later, we're still on the road. He hasn't said we get to stop yet. So it was a huge turn for our team. Once we got to our teams and we pull up in the RV, they were so excited and so empowered, and it was so inspiring to them. And we had no idea it was going to do that. So obviously he knew better than us, and we just needed to listen. But it was a transition, a worthy transition. My husband had transferred over to our business, but was struggling. He's not the entrepreneur I am. So he was struggling and needed the change, needed the opportunity to get out and see the world and see the markets. He couldn't envision the markets like I could. He had no idea what, even to the full extent that I was doing in the business. So it really changed his vision as well. So now when we talk about, well, are we done? He's like, nah, not yet. And so it's like, okay, and that's okay. But we figured out a few more things, right? He's not making me do 10 and 12-hour travel days anymore. Thank the Lord. Those were rough.
That's a long day.
It's a very long day, very long. And it takes recovery time for him and me. And it was just like, ugh. So now we've got it to like max 6 hours in a day. And I would prefer 4 hours, but it just depends on the route that we're going and such. That way there's still time to work in the business, because you don't always have signal when you're traveling, right? So
right. That's such a dad man thing. No, we're going the whole way, one day. That's
Oh, especially worse now that you have an onboard toilet. Let me tell you, we're not taking a potty break. Absolutely not.
just go in the back and lay down.
Yeah, he tried that one too, and I'm just like, absolutely not. All it took was one time for me to have him go back there. We have a diesel pusher, so the diesel fumes that are coming in through the back and the heat off the engine, oh, there's no way you could be in the back. It's insane.
Yikes. Yeah, we've done a few RV trips, and I don't really get motion sick, but something about going and laying in the bed while everything's in motion, it sounds great. You're like, oh, cool, the house is on wheels. We can just do whatever we want. And then you get going and you're like, yeah, no, that's actually not how it works.
That is not. Oh yeah, I get motion sickness very, very badly after my last concussion. And so it's like, okay, what am I going to do during this time?
Nice. Well, that's good. You guys have found that balance of how much time you can do, and you're able to work remotely. And I feel like COVID definitely brought that to light of how easy it is really to be remote, right? We have so much technology available, and even more is coming out now because of COVID. So just makes things, it's very conducive for that travel lifestyle. So I love that you guys are still doing that. That's awesome. So let's kind of get into it. You guys are fully remote. You're traveling around to your different teams. Kind of talk about, what it's like managing all of this and doing all of this on the road, and the strategy you guys use to keep the businesses growing.
It's actually a great question because I'm very entrepreneurial minded and my husband is not, right? So he spent all his life W-2 employee, being programmed, right? You do what you're told, you don't think outside the box, you don't blah, 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 And so that kind of butts up against each other on a regular basis when you talk about teams, because although he has built hundreds of teams and knows how to build people up into these other positions and scale and do all of that, he's never really had to stop. And there were so many times he would just jump back in and do the work himself. He's never really had to stop and go, that's not a possibility. I'm not going to be able to just show up today. I have to think outside the box, right? The challenges for us have been twofold. One, I've had to wait at times until he could get his hands back in and start doing again, and then go, why am I doing this again? And I've had to wait for that revelation to happen, because when I tried to push that issue, like, no, I already had my teams in place. I was already scaling and doing all this. He would self-sabotage. So we had to learn how to work through that as a team. And I've just learned, okay, well, I'll just let him work through it on his time and his terms. And then in the meantime, try to pick up the pieces on the other side. And now he's like, oh yeah, okay, I don't want to keep doing this. How can we fix this? Right. So now he's asking the right question. But women, we don't get to tell you those answers. We get to wait.
It has to be our idea first.
100%. So setting up the teams and realizing, okay, what things are outsourceable, what things aren't, recognizing, and with technology now, it's forced us to, about our technology, fixed a lot of our systems that were broken, like in just clunking along, to make them more streamlined. So it has more to do with which things we're outsourcing to technology and which things still need to keep in with our teams and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And are you guys still on the active side, or are you all passive and growing other businesses?
Oh, no, we're still 100% active as well. Yeah.
Wow. All right, so you liquidated Washington. What markets are you guys currently focused on?
So we're still in Arkansas, obviously that's why we're here. We're still in Florida, still in Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, and Louisiana.
That's awesome. Okay. So kind of touch on what the strategy behind that.
Our focus for our business is 100% sustainable growth. So how can we make America great? Well, we have to create growth that's sustainable. It's not a one and done thing. So to do that, we've been in all these markets all across the country. The one thing that's always missing is workforce housing. It's depleted. Before COVID, it was depleting. And then during COVID, that was the one that got hit the hardest. So the only things that finished out were those custom homes, those luxury class A's, things like that. So what happens is now we are having a huge detriment on that workforce housing. So when you stop and look at, okay, what does every community need? They need the workforce housing. But what did COVID teach everybody? They don't want to live in an apartment. They don't want to be trapped in an apartment with their family for months.
Can't blame them.
So everybody is looking for a house, but not everybody can afford a house, right? They can't always afford the down payment, or there's other reasons why they can't buy a house. Some of them just want to rent until they find their perfect home. So build to rent communities are meeting that need. So what we've done is, it's like a shotgun style house, simple, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,100 square foot. So you think of it like a regular subdivision, right? It's built and laid out like that, the streets, all of that, but it's all rentals. So we've also set it up so they're on individual parcels. So if anything happens, right? COVID, nobody knows what is happening with COVID. So we wanted to factor in for the what if this gets worse. So that's why we kept them on individual parcels. So if anything happens, we can sell off a few of them if we need to, and it will still work, right? And the people who would we sell them off to? The individuals who are already renting from us do lease to own options, right? Continue to build and escalate that model of, again, what are we doing? Creating sustainable growth. So it empowers the people within that community. It gives them hope and opportunity, but even more so, our mission is actually bigger than that. And it gives us the opportunity to reach an entire group. I mean, you're talking 100 homes, 100 families. That's usually 2 to 3 people. That's 2 to 300 people. We actually work to provide community resource managers and whatnot, and provide resources to that community. We work to make that community feel like a home. One thing COVID taught everybody, isolation is not good. And people need to feel like they're a part of something. And even if it's your community, and that's the biggest your world is, that's better than nothing. Because right now, COVID showed everybody that need needs to be more inclusive and less exclusive.
Absolutely. Wow. I love that so much. That's incredible. And so true. We talk to so many operators that are, kind of switching to the A-class development. And don't get me wrong, of course, we need that too. But the workforce housing does kind of fall by the wayside. It's not all on the operators and investors. Unfortunately, some of these cities aren't doing the best to set the infrastructure up for workforce housing. But, that's a conversation for another time. So I love that so much. We talked offline that you guys are impact investors. This is obviously a very sure sign of that. And when you take care of the residents, they take care of the property, and it just kind of, all comes full circle, and, they feel like they're a part of it and they want to stay. So let's talk about setting up an investor base for impact investing, right? Bringing investors on that want to be a part of this, what that's like, and even what not to do, so that, we can kind of stay away from those mistakes. We always talk about what to do, but let's talk about what not to do, and, how to build a solid investor base and what mistakes to avoid.
It is so true. Everybody talks about, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, and here's the 10-step plan to do this. What they don't tell you is what to do when everything goes wrong. And there's so many things that can go wrong.
It's true. It's true.
Then it's like, now what do I do? And there's no answers, right? Or so people don't feel like there's no answers. And it's when we get, look, down and real, this is how it goes. So one of the things we learned, we have a very large investor base. The problem is, if you're not keeping up with your investor base, people's emails are constantly changing, their phone numbers are changing, their interests are changing, right? People have different phases of their lives, and so their interests change. So if you're not keeping that investor base warm with constant connections and things, it becomes very much, cold contacts, and you have to start the process all over again. And that was shocking to me. And I have to constantly remind myself of that. So, okay, how can I remind my investors who I am, where I am, what we're doing, right? Well, so you have to build some of that out, and that takes time. You have to keep that going. The other thing is, you can get put in jail. I have done it. So we did not realize that a lot of investors use active campaign. So because my investor base was so large, I've been a teacher and a coach and an entrepreneur for so many years. I had a very large investor base, but because it was so large, active campaign immediately assumed I bought my list. And I'm like, absolutely not. This isn't my list. I've been in the business a long time. They're not used to that. Absolutely not used to it. I spent 2 weeks having to prove to them these were my investors. Wow. And this is how I know them. I had to bring back every single sign-up sheet that I had where they'd gotten their names from. I had to bring back, and I had to send all this proof into Active Campaign. I literally had to prove to them, these are my people. I know who they are. They know me. This is for real. So I got put in jail first for that. Then once I got out of jail, it wasn't even a day later, they put me back in jail. So I was in jail almost 8 weeks.
Yikes.
8 weeks.
That's 8 weeks of no contact to your investors and all of that.
So yeah. And during this time, it was during a very, very big raise. So very poor timing, right? So understanding that sometimes, although just like Twitter and Facebook, right? How much of our stuff was getting censored because it used the word investment, and you never knew investment was a bad word that Twitter has now said, or Facebook has now said, don't use that word. But you don't know
financial freedom. That's a trigger word in active campaign.
Financial freedom. Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, wait a minute, why is this a trigger word? And can you please send me a list of these trigger words? So when you keep changing your mind, I don't get shadow banned or this, I mean, it's unbelievable. And you don't even know you're shadow banned until, why is nobody seeing this stuff? What's going on? You know, I quickly had to figure out I need somebody else doing that. So I literally I've had a social media team. I've gone through social media teams, right? Because if they're not staying abreast, it's easy for them to just fall back on their heels and, oh, it's no big deal. It's like social media is constantly changing, active campaign constantly changing. It's not always about the fact that they may not want to invest with you, but their money is tied up. And if, just like how our deal kept getting extended because of the lenders, their deals may be not closing because of the same exact thing. So their money, which they think is going to be available in July, is now maybe not available till September, and things like this happen. And we have to account and remember that. So asking better questions was a huge one for me. I didn't even think to qualify where that investment is coming from. I just assumed I just needed to know how much,
right?
And would it be available? And that was enough. And I learned the hard way that I needed to know that. What do I need to learn? I need to be better. If we within our team don't do a good job, if those lanes are very clearly designated during a capital raise where that should be your main focus, you'll get pulled in all these other directions. Well, you need to tackle this fire, you need to tackle this fire, you need to tackle this fire, because again, they're used to you driving and they're not necessarily empowered because you haven't really laid out those clear and distinct roles. So setting aside those distinct designated roles so that when the heat of the moment, when that capital raise is going on, you know exactly who's doing what, who's following up. The best way to be prepared is to prepare when there's not an emergency, right? So practice, 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 and then practice some more, right? So that when the heat of the moment comes, you don't even think twice about it. It's just natural. People often ask, man, Bethany, how can you stay calm in such crazy, stressful situations? Practice, practice, practice some more, right? Let's do a practice run. So like we would do that on some things, right? We would practice our webinars.
Yeah.
But we never thought about
huge one.
Practicing our systems, right? If an investor comes on, what's the steps that's going to happen? And let's test those out and practicing that. Who's going to do this and how's this going to happen? How's this, right? So instead of figuring it out as you go, practice it all the way through. Setting up test investors and things of that nature. We don't often stop and think about the wiring process, but there are some people that will not wire and they'll still want to send a check.
Oh my gosh.
You're like, what? It is very, very true. There are still people who want to send a check. You've got to have a process for that. And with us, we didn't even think, who sent a check? They still do it, FedEx, and it'll be a certified check. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we got to figure out who's getting this and where it's going and how's that happening, right?
So do you guys have a designated like PO box or mailing address now for those investors who want to do that?
100%, yeah. And same thing, right? Lived and learned, gone through it, figured out, okay, that's what we need to fix. That's what we need to fix. So each time your system gets less clunky and more streamlined and more streamlined and more streamlined. And then when having the daily check-ins, we didn't necessarily always know why we would need a daily check-in, but we did hear that from some other investors, and we're like, okay, well, let's set it up. Oh my word, that was such a lifesaver.
That's
because
awesome.
There's so many times, and it doesn't have to be a 20-minute daily check-in. Sometimes it was only 5 minutes, right? We created a spreadsheet, and each person had their lane. We used monday.com and their tasks, and we had all of our checklists in there. And then each morning it was, okay, who needs what, check your stuff, see if it needs anything. Okay, no, we need to talk about this, or we don't need to talk about this. And that was a huge lifesaver. But how to go about reducing the stress is just planning for success. So many of us step into it thinking, Well, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to try it. Literally, those are their words. I'm going to try it. No, you're not going to try it. You're going to succeed. You're going to do it. And this is what it's going to look like. So make your plan for success, and do it.
Right.
And instead of, I'm going to try it. Right. And so when you do that, you literally change the momentum of your team, your systems, how you think about those systems, every bit of it.
Wow. I love that. That's so true. And what people don't see is the sleepless nights, the pulling your hair out. You know, you're not posting that on social media when you're still awake at 2 a.m. because you want to make sure that all of those soft commits are actually going to be in your account. And right, like those are the things. And people are like, oh man, yeah, you make it look so easy. And it's like, well, yeah, because I made every mistake possible along the way.
100%. Like one of the biggest lessons we learned as well was have backups upon backups.
Oh.
And the funniest thing was, I've always done that with contractors and team members, but never did I ever stop to think about needing it for lenders. I never would have imagined the need for a big multifamily lender to need to have a backup. It's like, what? Why would I need a backup? I mean, they're like supposed to be the most committed and most responsible. Oh no, because they're having turnover too. And what we don't stop to think about is, just as our businesses are expanding, so are theirs. They're bringing on brand new team members just the same. They had a completely green team that they assigned to one of our big contracts. They didn't know what they were doing.
Oh, wow.
They killed our deal. They literally killed our deal. 3 extensions. The seller was so fed up by the time that we were done, and it was completely out of our control. Other than the extent of, if we would have said, no, you're done, we're pulling this deal, you guys can't get this job done, we have no faith in you, and just gone with another lender. But we always think in the back of our head, oh, we're so far along, why would we want to do that now?
I know.
Let's just finish it out. Let's just finish. But now it's so much different mindset when you have the mentality of, I have a backup in place, I'm done, pull the plug, move along, and do something different. And you can actually usually still get the deal done in the same time frame if you do it at the right time. And so it's like, okay, backups upon backups necessary.
It's so true. And because it's hard, right? You, like you said, you get in that spot where you think that it's the point of no return, but in reality, you really need to step back and be like, okay, what does it look like to start over with a team that can get it done?
100%. Yeah. Sometimes the strategy needs to change. It's still to close the deal, right? But sometimes the team members you learn along the way are the wrong ones on the wrong bus. Get them off, fire quickly, hire slowly. Most people don't realize you can shop lenders. You can figure this out. You can get referrals from other people. Have you worked with them? How did this go? And, that kind of thing. And so this one came highly referred. We had no idea that it was a brand new team. And the moment we found out it was a brand new team, we should have pulled the plug. We should have immediately been done or demanded a new team. Would have changed everything. Yeah,
it's tough, right? Because it's such a catch-22. It's like, well, they also need to learn how to do this stuff, but I don't want to be the one. I don't want it to be my deal. Awesome. Well, this has been incredible. I really appreciate all of your insight. We are coming up on time. And I do have 5 questions that I ask all of my guests. It's the final 5. So the first question is, what's the best advice you've gotten from a mentor?
Fire fast, hire slowly.
Wow. I love that. No, I haven't heard that before. No one really talks about the firing process and all of that. I'm not to that point where I have that big of a team, but.
Oh yeah, no. It can be on the smallest of deals. I literally had 8 guys that I had to fire off one project alone. And I'm upstairs in my, up the bedroom of, again, the 8th guy I've just had to fire. It's 2 a.m. I'm in tears going, who's going to help me finish this, right? And I have a coaching call in 10 minutes, that's because it was on the East Coast. So I needed, and then I was supposed to get on a flight in 2 hours. I had no sleep, no anything. And it's like, what? I mean, you just feel hopeless, right? And she's like, Bethany, you need to learn to fire fast and hire slowly, because as a woman, and this was a woman coach, right? As a woman, men don't respect you the same in the business world. And you have to understand that they're not going to think the same. And there will be those that try to disrespect you, and you need to hold your ground. You need to set boundaries, you need to set lines, and you need to hold your ground. And it was like, okay, all right. And it was true, 100%. Ever since I've done that, it's made a huge difference in our business.
Wow, that's incredible. Such great insight. What is it about your career that makes you feel like you're fulfilling your why?
Most people don't stop to think about, but as a wife, our why is our family and our husband. And I saw my husband going through a major depression, kind of that midlife crisis, bored to tears with working and unchallenged and unmotivated. And the Lord just said, I need you to start this business for him and for the men. And I'm like, are you crazy? Do you know who you're talking to? I suck at this. My husband tells me I suck at this. This is not the right person that should be doing this. Obviously, he felt different and understood that there was a different reason. And he said that when I see those light bulb moments going off in my husband and I see him getting his spark back, and I see the other men that we've been able to help and build up and empower and just inspire them to be men again. I mean, that's ultimately what it kind of comes down to. It sparks me. It's like, okay, this is why I'm doing this. This is why it's hard, right? Because I'm going against the flow. I'm fighting, but the return and it's those light bulb moments that it's like, okay, all of this is worth it.
Wow. I love that. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. What's your favorite non-real estate or investment related book?
So far, I would have to say, and I know a lot of people say this, but I think it's because there's different times in our lives that things resonate. And Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. The reason is because I am a connector of people, and Who Not How, I mean, the whole mission statement is, look, you're connecting people. So I think for me, it just super resonates with the fact that if I'm supposed to connect people, I can't be thinking I'm going to do everything myself. I have to have that open mind, that open concept. We're here to collaborate. We're here to, and let's find a way to make this happen. So I think he does the best job at explaining that and teaching that.
Absolutely. I love that book. I did a whole solo episode centered around that book and how important it is to find your unique ability and then hire the rest out, because ultimately you're going to grow and scale and make more money really doing that. Because if not, you just slow yourself down. So
I've tripped myself up more than enough times.
Right. And listen, we all have to make those mistakes, right? You can't be perfect, but once you can understand how important that is, it kind of just like, cool. Okay, I don't know how to do this. We're going to find someone who does.
100%.
I love it. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
I've always been, Superman has always been my guy, and I've always wanted to fly, but I get airsick, and I don't know that I could do it in a plane. I mean, I get airsick really bad in planes. But if I was the one flying and I was controlling, I think it's different, right? People don't get airsick and car sick when they're the driver. So I feel like if I could fly, I could be anywhere in seconds. And I've skydived multiple times, absolutely love it. And I don't like the free fall. I love the shoot time. I'm out there doing flips and spins and all kinds of things because that's the part. If I could be the eagle that just soars, that's what I would love.
Wow. I love that. That's awesome. I've yet to been skydiving, but it is on my bucket list for sure.
Oh, you will love it. You will love
That's
it.
what I've been told. Awesome. Last one. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you and learn more?
So my LinkedIn is probably the best way. I've got a YouTube channel for sure. American Made Home Solutions is our YouTube channel. Tons and tons and tons of free information, whether it's about credit or short-term rentals or impact investing. It's all there on our YouTube channel. Our LinkedIn is probably the best way to actually connect and make contact with me and that such. So under my name, Bethany Finch. We do have the business one, American Made Home Solutions as well. So.
Perfect. We'll link that in the show notes. Bethany, I cannot thank you enough for your time and going to Starbucks just to make sure this gets done. Thank you so much.
You're important, and what you're doing is important. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't the one that messed it up. So thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.